Very exciting.
Oh, boy.
All right, so welcome to New Jersey contracts. Has everyone here written a contract before?
I have, yes.
Okay, and when you wrote the contract, do you know why you're writing this stuff in the contract, what you're writing? Like, okay, so yeah. That's usually what I get. Someone taught me how to do it. I wrote it down and I just follow and duplicate it. So what I'm gonna do is kind of, I'm gonna try to make this as interesting as I can for you, because it does get a little boring going through this stuff, but it's really stuff you really need to know. And if you know it and you use it well, it's really a negotiating tool and it helps you and your client get the offer. Okay, because time and time again, I see things where, 20 offers come in, the listing agent looks at the contract and goes, yeah, this person doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, and puts it aside. That's pile B or C. It's not in stack A that I'm really recommending to my client, because why would I? Why would I want to work with an agent that doesn't even know how to write the contract properly? That means I have to do all the work on the seller side. And no one wants to do that. So let's dive right in. And print it out. So you have your package. Front and back is the full contract, which is 14 pages, plus you have the opinion 26, which is your first page. And the last page of the contract is an add-on, which is the wire fraud notice. Okay, when you pull the contract up in NJAR, which is the New Jersey Association of Realtors, you will get that entire package. Okay, then also within that, after the contract are all the addendas. Okay, the only one addenda I didn't have included in there was the Corona.
It's over.
It's done.
It's over.
It's over.
I'm done.
Yeah.
So real quickly, to start with the opinion.
Can I ask a really quick question? This wire fraud notice, I don't know if I see this as attached to this in command.
It's not.
Is it?
Oh,
not?
yeah, it's not.
Oh, okay.
We just
Yeah.
confirmed that.
Oh, okay, all right.
So one thing I will tell you about New Jersey and the contract is usually once a year, they update them. So there's always new contracts. So the contract right now, if you look at the bottom of these I want you to take notes on. Okay, do not copy and use these. Use this right here now, this packet, to make notes with, because on the bottom it still has my old company, Howard Hanna. So we're not going to use these. These are strictly, and these are the forms from NJAR. When you print a form from NJAR, it pulls it and has Keller Williams on the bottom in little print, because that's what you're attached to, your license. Okay. So the first page, as I started to say, that is your opinion 26. And what that means is this is telling your client on the opinion 26, the first page, that look, what you're signing right now, you're making this offer, and this is a binding contract that you are signing. It tells them that they should get an attorney, and ramifications that if they do not get an attorney, this actually will be the contract that will be used. Because once they sign this and once the seller signs it and it comes back, the only person that can cancel this contract is the attorney, unless both parties agree. And usually that's not even done correctly, because it has to be in writing and you don't even want to get a part of that. Okay, so you want to make sure that your client understands that. And paragraph 4, you'll notice it says that this contract becomes binding unless you get it to the attorney within 3 business days. So that is really officially what they call the ARIP period, your attorney review in progress. It's almost it was started as 3 days. You do the contract and the attorney is supposed to review it in 3 days, get it out, and good to go. That's not what really happens in real life. It's those 3 days that you get it to the attorney and the attorney rejects it. And they say, okay, this contract we reject, and we're going to put our own language in it. Okay. After that, now, really what we're calling ARIP is that time that the attorneys now are sitting with the contracts. And they're going back and forth. And if you have an out-of-state attorney or someone that doesn't really practice real estate law, they're in no rush, they're not sure what they're doing, and they're trying to rewrite the contract. Really all it is the attorney adding their rider And the rider will say in one part of it that this contract is reincorporated. Okay, so we're making this live again. This is the active contract, the one that you wrote, but the rider is going to rule. So if there's any conflicting information between what this contract says and what the rider says, the rider wins out. Okay, so right now, if both parties are using New Jersey real estate attorneys that know what they are doing, it can be a pretty quick process. The 3 days is 3 business days. It does not include your Saturday or Sunday, and it does not include federal holidays. Okay, so really right now, what I'm seeing is that about 6 days is 6 to 8 days is the average turnaround to have your deal be marked in ARIP, which is, okay, both parties signed a contract. And then within 6 to 8 days, I see that goes from ARIP to under contract, which means the riders were filled out, the attorneys all agree, the parties all agree, the buyer is going to be bringing in his or her deposit. Okay, and you'll see that in the MLS, so you'll always see where a listing has active, right? A for active. As soon as there is an accepted offer and it's an ARIP, you have a little asteroid next to the A, which means it's an ARIP. Means the attorneys now have this, but you can still be going and looking at the property. You can still be making offers on the property. And you have to present every single offer up until the time the property closes. And as an attorney, I always say, if you get an offer after you're in contract, give it to your attorney. Do not give it to your client, because you don't want to be the one to tell your client like, hey, you may want to breach that contract and go with this one because it's so much higher. You can't do that. You'll be liable for that. But you still have an ethical obligation to present all offers until the time it closes. Okay. And if I start going fast, just stop me. This is totally interactive, and I like when you guys voice your opinion. Michael, how are you?
Printing or signing this first page, because I've done both.
The what?
Printing or signing the names, because I've done both.
Well, for you, you're prepared by, I usually print in prepared by at the very bottom and sign, or have I don't know how your company does it. You do DocuSign, but do you, as the managing designated broker, sign off on all the contracts?
No,
No.
agent.
No.
Okay, I know some companies do that,
No.
but we didn't either.
So, but is the buyer printing or signing?
Oh, the buyer is signing.
He's talking about the buyer and then the agent, so
Okay.
you would sign this is after sign.
Yeah, no, but I want to know the buyer. Are they printing or signing?
They're signing.
They're signing.
They're signing. So the first page, they're going to sign. On every single page in the contract thereafter, they have to initial, and then they also sign at the end. Okay, so let's flip to the next page. And some really simple, basic things that I just want to explain why you're doing what you're doing, where it's the first thing on here, where it says buyer's name. Very important that you ask the buyer what their legal name is and what names are going on the deed. Because what happens is, as I said, this contract gets rejected, but then it gets reincorporated. The attorneys look at this contract and what you put in here for all of their information. Okay, so check your spelling, check that you're not using a nickname, because at the closing, when they're sitting there and they go, let me have your license, and the attorneys are checking the parties' licenses, and they look and they go, this is the wrong name. Let me tell you, no one's going to be happy with you when everything has to get redone.
Is it okay to ask the buyer for their license?
Absolutely, absolutely. Way back when I was doing active sales, I always asked people for a copy of their license, and I would take a quick picture with my phone. You know what? That's a safety thing. But it also now makes it easier for when you're doing the contract. You have their official spelling of their name.
So another question, if someone is, husband and wife, but the husband is getting the mortgage on his own, but would like the wife's name on the deed, how would this be filled out? Would both parties' names be on it? Because on the mortgage pre-approval letter, just the husband, but maybe the husband said, well, I want my wife on the official deed. How does that all work?
So that is something that needs to be discussed with the lender. Some lenders are different and require or that both names be on the mortgage also. So that's an attorney and a lender question. So with the contract, I always say, stay in your own lane. We know the basics of what goes in here. And if you're not 100% sure and know the reasoning why, then go to the party that should know the answer and will know the answer. And that is the attorney and the lender in that case.
So prior to filling out, just check with them.
Yeah,
and
I
say, hey,
mean, you
this is the
should be working,
situation.
your lender, obviously, I hope everyone is working, you're working with a team. Like that's what we do. We work with our agents as a team. So there's never a question when before they go to fill out a contract, before they're making offers, we've already had this conversation with the actual buyer and then with the agent. If the buyer hasn't had that conversation with the agent, we let them know. So when they're writing it up. Okay. Right under there, your seller's name. So many times you look at the MLS and it'll be undisclosed, which to this day I still think is the most stupidest thing because all you gotta do is click the
Look it up.
button. You click the button, the tax record, and it's disclosed. So that's exactly what you do. Click the tax and just, you can have it in there. If worse comes to worse and there is not a name, which I have found on occasion that there's no name on the tax record, just leave it blank and let the listing agent know that that has to be filled out.
Lisa, on the address for the buyer on our current offers, it's not necessary with the offer page to put their address in. If we didn't put the address in there, would that be rejected by an attorney? Is that important?
It's not gonna be rejected, but why would you not put their address?
Yeah, no, just to.
Yeah, they're
know
gonna
how-
need it. They need an address.
Okay,
Yep, with all contracts, you need to know the person's name and address.
Yeah.
Okay, same with the seller. Again, you know, if you don't know it, that's not detriment. You ask the listing agents and they'll give it to you.
Piggyback off of his question, are you only covering mandatory fields or all fields?
No, I'm gonna go through all fields.
Oh,
Yep. Try. If I miss something, let me know. So the next one down, your property address. Very easy, your street address, your town, the municipal tax map of whatever county you're in, Bergen County, Essex County, Passaic. I imagine most of your contracts will be in Bergen County, New Jersey. Your block, lot, and your qualifier, those are in your MLS. Okay, just like in New York, you have your block and lot. New Jersey now for condos has what they call a qualifier to identify the property. So you're going to just look on the listing in the upper right-hand corner, and it's very clearly marked block lot and what that is. And you're going to copy that into here. Again, do so with care because everyone is copying from this contract. Next line. So we'll talk about the purchase offer. So your purchase price is going to go in the first line here, total purchase price. The next line, it talks about an initial deposit.
0.
Yes, unless it's a bank owned.
Okay.
Yeah, so the majority of the time, I want you to just remember, either just put a line through it, NA 0, because it doesn't count. The initial deposit, way back when, used to be that brokerages had an escrow account where agents would take a check from the buyer, say for $1,000 or upwards to $5,000, but 1,000 was the typical amounts that they would take the check, put it into the brokerage escrow account and hold on to it until closing.
So we still have that accounts.
Don't abuse.
So that's why I'm telling you, that's a
Yeah.
0. We actually put a 0 online for you guys so that there's no mistake.
Okay.
So I just want.
Yeah, because we don't take money. Brokerages, we should never be taking money. And what was happening was that $1,000 was getting lost, forgotten about, causing issues at closings, you know,
There's
just a
time frames
big
where it
headache.
has to be delivered to the attorney. It's.
Yes, so now if there's any money that ever has to be given up front, typically you will just do that to the buyer's attorney's escrow account. Let the attorneys handle all the money. You don't want to touch money. And the only time I say that there is an exception, if you do a bank-owned property, a lot of times they will ask you to take a picture of a check for $500, and that is your initial deposit. You can take a picture, tell the client to write out their check for $500. Do not take it, do not hold it, you don't want it.
Who's it made out to?
Huh?
Who's the check made out to?
It's buyer's turn.
It usually will tell you in the bank who to make the check out to in the bank. So if you're doing these bank properties, there's all these different directions to them. Each one is different. Home Path has one way of putting it. They're all different ones. So you have, with any of those properties, if you're doing a bank, there are actually little videos in every different type. Home Path has great videos on how to do their listings and how to submit offers and what to do. Again, it's so few times that you actually will see that happen, but just know it's there. And if it does happen and you're like, oh my God, I got to take $500. No, you don't want to take a check that's written out to Keller Williams. You don't want to take a check that's written out to you. You'll figure it out, but you have to take a picture of a check and send it in. But you're not accepting the money. Okay, so call me if that happens. All right. Next, you have your additional deposit. So who can tell me the difference between a deposit and a down payment?
Come on, guys, you all know.
Deposits with the
Good faith and all good.
contract. And the down payment is at the closing.
Okay, got Willie?
Down payment is the entire amount.
Mhm.
Deposit is a portion of the down payment.
So a lot of people get that confused. So your deposit is the amount of money, just like you would be taking when in New York, the buyer brings the attorney, the deposit that they're putting down, right? That's held as liquidated damages. Should there be a breach of contract? Okay, so that's your 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever it is. That's the amount there. When you're talking about a down payment, you're talking about, the whole thing, the mortgage. 20% is my down payment towards my mortgage, towards the whole purchase price. Okay, so we're looking here at just the amount that the buyer will be giving the attorney when they go in to review the rider. And then once it's approved, they bring in the check that they're holding in deposit. Little bit different, not as easy to get. I think New York is easier if there's a breach of contract to get that deposit money. In New Jersey, it's a lot harder, but it pretty much goes on the same theory. Okay, next line is your mortgage amount. And then the bottom line, the balance, that is the remainder of your down payment. So you have the purchase price minus your down payment, minus your mortgage, and that leaves you your balance. Okay, so those numbers should always add up. And again, you'll see initials at the bottom for the buyer and seller because every page must be initialed.
I'm sorry, real quick question on qualifier. Qualifier is usually like, I know it's for condominiums, but is it not the name of the condominium? Like if it's,
They have like numbers now in New
okay.
Jersey.
The line above that, line 38, it says shown on the municipal tax map of the
Bergen,
town goes there, or just the, because it says there's a little space and then there's the county, so it's a tax map of, is it like,
I
Park
do-
Ridge and then county of Bergen, or no?
yeah, I've seen it go both ways and I think the attorneys know, so as long as you're putting all in, you have your town, Bergen County. And, I see people put tax map of Bergen County, but it's really the tax map of the town.
Okay.
Okay, next page, manner of payments. A, just put a line through it. Again, we just talked about the initial deposit. The initial deposit is 0. So that is not applicable. So we go directly to B, which is the additional deposit. And again, that is the amount that the buyer is giving to the attorney to be held in escrow. Okay. And here you'll notice that it says that this is not asking for an amount, it's actually a date. And the standard is 10 days. You could cross that out and put it within 2 days. This is the amount of time once the attorney says, okay, we're good to go. We're under contract officially. Because remember, you're under contract, then you're not, and you're in the attorney review period, and now you're back to being under contract. So it's from that time when all the parties have agreed and all have signed off on the rider, that now that's saying within 10 days from that date, the buyer needs to bring in their deposit. And that's a bit of a long period. That's a stretch of time.
The
So,
attorneys can change that though. If they were to leave that blank when the attorneys are in attorney review, they can change that date to whatever. they
Absolutely.
see fit.
yep, they can. Now, again, knowing the principles and why this is the way it is and what the terms mean, if I'm in a bidding war and I know there are 20 offers and I'm sitting with my buyer, I can say buyer, okay, so you have the cash, it's ready to go, okay. You know what, when you sign the rider, let's make this 2 days, you bring it right in, bring it when you go sign the rider. That's what they do in New York, they bring the deposit when they go in to sign the contract. So basically, signing the rider is almost like in New York, signing your contract and bringing your check with you. Okay, or they drop it off the next day, you know, it's you sign, you get the check and everything is delivered to the seller's attorney where everything sits then in the seller's attorney's escrow accounts. So same thing is happening here, but they've, New Jersey found that so many agents were getting these things wrong. They put these broad dates as defaults. So you're always safe with the default, but again, knowing what this is doing and how you can strengthen your offer by tightening things up in the contract will serve you very well. Okay. The next one is,
Lisa, sorry.
uh-huh,
Isn't it also 10 days to get an inspection as well?
yep, we'll get to that.
Okay, but doesn't this kind of go hand in hand, like me representing the buyer, wouldn't I want to use that whole 10 days? I just want to get this locked up. You know, I haven't come across too many short New Jersey agents that are like, oh, I want it to be shorter. And representing the buyer, doesn't it, it helps myself and my buyer out, because once we're out of attorney review, we're in contract. Now we have 10 days, they could come up with the money later. I always leave it blank.
Okay, I mean, there are all different schools of thoughts on it. You know,
Why would I want that inspection done before I kind of want my buyer to hand in any monies, you know what I mean?
again, in a normal market, absolutely, all the time in the world. To me, in a market where I have sitting in a stack of 20, 30 offers,
And Michael, you know, you've asked to have inspections done before the contracts are even signed, so that's an option as well, to tighten things up.
look, with a standard, just so you get a general view. So now you have you made your offer, everyone's agreed, and you have an accepted offer. You have those days, 3 days go by, let's say it's a Friday, you have your accepted offer. The attorney is getting it by Friday afternoon, maybe on Monday, maybe they get to look at it and get the rider out on Tuesday. They've now reviewed it. Okay, client, come on in. So you're looking at like 5 to 6 days now that other offers can be coming in. And now still you have that outside 2-week period if you leave all the defaults. So now you're like, okay, I got a full almost 7 to 10 days plus another 7 to 10 days for that inspection to get the report for the attorneys to go back and forth. You could be losing your deal in a month. After now, you spent all that energy, your clients have spent the time and energy, they're hooked on that house, and then, oh, my dreams are lost. I just lost that
Does it
house.
stay in attorney review even beyond the 3 days? Or
It can.
So attorney review just means that the contract must be reviewed and either accepted or rejected. So that's why as soon as you have, both parties have signed it and gotten it back, it has to go directly to the attorneys, and the attorneys will automatically reject it.
Right.
So now they've satisfied actually the attorney review period. So that's what people get mixed up, but it's still kind of,
And it
it's
does-
lingering. They're
doesn't it-
negotiating by getting that rider back.
Doesn't it go into contract then?
Well, no, it's not in a contract until both attorneys agree on what's going to go in the rider, which the rider then will reincorporate the contract and say, however, if there's any conflicting information between the rider and the contract, the rider rules.
Right, but then while it's in contract, right, I'm protecting my buyer, and then we'll still have the 10 days to get the inspection and everything else, no?
Well, so let's say the buyer brings in the deposit on the day with the rider, which they typically do anyway, even if you put 10 days, the attorney will say, hey, bring your deposit in. They're bringing it in anyway. This is just a smoke and mirrors kind of thing, saying to the agent, hey, I know my shit and I'm gonna put this out there, make everything tight. Like, I wanna make this as smooth and easy as possible for your seller. Okay, so that's why you're doing all this. The attorney's telling them to bring in their deposit anyway. But,
There's a separate line for inspection in the contract.
but the people that don't bring in that deposit right away, you'll get, if you have a good listing agent, they're on the phone going, why didn't the client bring in the deposit? Like, what's going on? Like, are you expecting to like negotiate things? I mean, let's face it, right now in this market we're talking about, the only thing they're doing on inspections is saying structural engineer safety hazard. Otherwise, so what are you so worried about? Why is your client not bringing in the money? And if you don't bring in the money in that 10 days, guess what? Boom, you're gone. So remember, there's a lot of leeway that the attorneys can boot a contract.
Can it go? After attorney review, can it be signed? And then if you don't have the deposit monies in, where is it, is it labeled attorney review or contract? Or
No, you're
what-
still under contract with your obligation here
Oh, okay.
within 10 days. If you don't bring that money in within 10 days, let's say your client gets a little bit laxed
Great,
and forgets,
great.
bye-bye, you can be booted.
In this current market, it boosts a deal because the client was dragging their feet. Don't want to take any chances with anything in this market.
Yeah, you don't want to take the chance in this market because the seller's got 5 other offers right behind you. And they got 5 other offers. They're going to say, you know what, I don't need to do that. I'll bring it this right now. I'll hand deliver my deposit, my contract, everything. So, you got to, again, take into account what your market's doing.
So you're saying right after attorney review, have that deposit? brought
Well, the
to-
attorney will bring them. We'll tell them what to do. They're going to
Okay.
advise them. So you don't need to
So
advise
we don't
anything
have
like
to
that.
be- okay.
The reason you really need to know this, one, for negotiating purposes, but two, your job is to briefly go over with your clients what this means. It is a contract. You're not an attorney. And remember, you're not changing. You can add some things in paragraph 43 as additions to the contract. You cannot change the language in this contract. That would be unauthorized practice of law. I can, because I'm an attorney, but you guys can't unless you're an attorney, okay? But you need to be able to explain to them, like, here's the ramification, you're gonna fill this out, we need to have our attorney, our team, what attorney do you usually recommend to your clients? You need to have that in place and tell them before you're signing this, you need to go pick out, go have a couple of conversations and make sure you have an attorney on board. So as soon as we get the offer accepted, bing, I can put my offer package together and send it over to them. Okay? All right. Where are we? It's paragraph. Escrow is your seller's attorney's account. That's who holds your money.
Why is the field left open then if it's always seller's attorney? Why is it not filled?
Who that seller's attorney is.
I've seen people
You
put
could check
buyer's
with
attorney,
buyers.
but the attorney's road is gonna change it, so. It's just standard that the seller's attorney holds it.
The state creates these rules.
Okay, so let's go to the mortgage, which is section, paragraph D. And you'll note the blanks in there. And again, I'm skipping, I'm not literally going line to line reading through this with you. I'm hoping that you all will read through this at least one time in your life, read through the whole entire thing. Your principal amount is the amount of your mortgage. That is not the purchase price, it's your mortgage amount. And you must, hopefully exactly what kind of loan, because if you mark it as a conventional and then try to flip it as an FHA, you can't do that. And again, 5 other offers, people are gonna get pissed and they're gonna go bye-bye and move on. When you have a really slow market and it's a buyer's market, you can get away with that. You can't in this market. You have to be upfront. And why is that? Why would it make a difference between an FHA and a conventional?
Down
Risk.
payment amount.
Down payment, but
Risk.
what else?
So many
Risk.
different
What's the
things.
biggie?
Inspection,
The
everything.
inspection, yes, right? You see peeling paint on a conventional loan. All right, you got some peeling paint on a FHA. Can't close where you have peeling paint.
Do you mean appraisal or inspection?
Inspection.
Well, when they do, for FHA, when they come out to do the appraisal, it's a mini inspection.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about. Okay. All right, and underneath that, it has term of mortgage, blank years. Typically, we always see what, 30
30.
years based on minimum payments on a 30-year payment schedule. Under that, so your commitments. In here, the automatic date, which you'll see is the next blank. It says if left blank 30 days from the time attorney review period is completed. You better know your lender, again, especially in this market. If you're dealing with, I call it big box bank, a Chase, a TD, likely not going to get that commitment in 30 days. And again, you've now just spent and wasted all your time, your client's time, because they're getting booted and they're going with the next offer. They're going, you don't have your commitment. What do you mean you don't have your commitment? Bye-bye, move on. You can't play games in this market. You have to know your stuff. So again, that's a default date in here, but I don't know why they put that in there. But it forces you to have that conversation. Again, I hope you're working. You have to have your team, your lender as your partner, and you should know this information before you make your offer. All right, section E, the balance of the purchase price. A little confusing because you think, okay, we're going to talk money here when actually you're talking about the closing date. So in New York, when you make your offer, you're doing an on or about closing date, right? In New Jersey, when you make your offer, you're looking at a calendar and you're talking with your clients and you're talking with your lender and you're actually choosing a date that you think would be wise to close on. So it's a really targeted date that all the attorneys and everyone actually tries to abide by. They may not get it exact, but really they go for that date. So be mindful of that. I see so many people just pulling a date from there. And I'm like, well, did you talk to the client? And they're like, well, no, like, oh, it's 45 days. Well, okay, but maybe your client's not ready in 45 days. Like really, take that serious. Excuse me. I also recommend never, if you can avoid it, not to do the last day of the month and not to do a Friday. Any clue why?
Something about the bank.
Hmm?
Something about the bank.
So many people are doing it.
Well, if you're doing it on a Friday and something goes wrong, now your client's out for the whole weekend, right? Fridays, you're going to end up seeing a lot of times the attorneys will tell you are the deals from like Thursday or from Wednesday that something happened and they had to push. They don't typically try to schedule the first closing date on a Friday. And again, with the last day of the month, you have all your numbers are really changing when you change from month to month. So if you can avoid that, best to not pick those 2 dates. Sufficient, paragraph 4, basically the buyer is saying, and again, they're signing this contract, they're saying that we have sufficient funds. So again, I'm just going through this because I know you're going to go read it all and you'll kind of know what it is. The next one, accurate disclosure of the selling price. Again, we're just assuming and stating forthright that everyone's being honest and upfront. Number 6, often missed thing because of the way it's written in the contract. I don't know why they've never done this. They list out all these items included and people forget to fill this out. Even though items included in sale includes all of your appliances and shrubbery and fencing and electric and yada, yada, yada. Look at your listing, pay attention when you're in the house. This goes for New York also, because I've been in so many fights where I've seen people fighting over the window treatments. I mean, that is the most often fought over thing is window treatments, light fixtures, right? So note it, look at the MLS. And I always call it lazy agent that doesn't put anything in it. Because when you look through, I would say 90% of them just have nothing as being included and nothing being excluded. And I know that's none of you, because you go through and you put down what's being included and what's being excluded, right?
So.
Per
MLS.
Yeah,
No,
this is your reputation that you're building, right? So you want your client to be happy and you can avoid a lot of problems at closing and just be the superstar. look, do the other agent's job. I say, if it's blank, I fill in
Then
everything
yes.
being included. Oh, I see that. I'm including it. Every light fixture is included. Every window treatment is included. I just include it all.
Chandeliers.
I did my job. I protected my client. I made sure everything is in there. And then if they don't come back at that closing, I know, well, you can give my clients credits, you know, if there was a washer and dryer. Big item. Agents forget it all the time. Guess who's paying for the washer and dryer if it's not included? And it should be. You are. So keep that in mind. Same thing with the next paragraph, the items that are excluded. So those are the two. Six is included, 7 is excluded. Paragraph 8, dates and times for performance. Again, I'm not going to really go through this whole thing. Your first blank in here is just leave it blank. It's the closing agent, your title company that does your closing. Just read through that. There's nothing major in there. You just need to know it. Paragraph 9, certificate of occupancy and zoning compliance. So does anyone know what a CCO is?
Continuing.
Continuing certificate of occupancy, correct. I know there are 2 towns, I believe, in Rockland that do this, have the in-town inspection prior to closing. New Jersey, there's maybe 2 towns that I know of that don't require it. So just think pretty much automatically that there's going to be needed a CCO. So what that means is if you're the buyer's agent, you want to make sure about mark your calendars, maybe 45 days to 60 days, 45 days, I'll say in this market, that you're reaching out to the listing agent and saying, did they get the CCO? Okay, which means they've applied to the town, they paid the fee, the building inspector and the fire inspector have come to the property and they have cleared it and issued a CCO, and you're good to go.
This is talking about CCO, not a CO for the building itself, correct? This paragraph is referring to CCO.
CCO.
Right.
Mhm. Now, what happens is the blank here, where it says if left blank 1.5%, that's the amount when the town inspector comes and the seller has the finished basement that was never permitted. And all of a sudden, they got the inspector on a bad day and the inspector says, you know what? Rip it out. I want to see the electrical work. Open up all your walls, which they have every right to do if it was not done with a permit. I've seen it happen before. You catch someone on a bad day and they can be not so nice. So this caps the seller's responsibility. It doesn't mean that it becomes the buyer's responsibility. It just means the seller can just say, you know what, I'm not doing it. I want out of the contract. And there's no ramifications. So it's the default is 1.5% of the purchase price, which means if the cost to cure the defect that was found during the inspection is less than 1.5% of the purchase price, the seller has to fix it and doesn't have an out of the contract. Okay.
Is there a reasonable number beyond the 1.5 that you would recommend?
I like the 1.5. In this market too, I like the 1.5. I've seen agents try to come back at like $500, but people want to move. They're trying to get, you know, if it's going to be a problem, it's going to be a problem down the line too. At some point, the issue is going to have to be resolved. So I think 1.5. And what happens then is that if it's more than 1.5, it becomes a negotiation. The attorney, it doesn't mean that the seller is going to automatically say, I want out of the contract. It gives them the right to do that. But it then becomes a negotiation between the attorneys.
So would it be a prudent idea if you see a basement that's finished to ask before you even get to, the, you know, has there been a CCO on this or a permit? Is it permitted, whatever was done?
Yeah, so if you're a listing agent in New Jersey, I always suggest pulling an Oprah, which is like a FOIL request here in New York. And that will tell you, because that's you would be so advising your client, like, okay, here's the issues that are going to come up. All right,
But
so
wouldn't it be good if you represent the buyer as well?
Mhm.
If you
So-
don't want to get to the finish line and then,
So
This
as
is
a
a-
buyer, once you're in contract, I mean, look, this market is going way too fast. So you want to get in contract, but yes, the buyer, I always recommend also that the buyer do an Oprah and pull it. Especially if, again, you have a lazy agent on the other side, that's the listing agent, and it's just the listing and not really doing anything and not servicing their client. You need to be the one that's being proactive. And if you can find out and you all of a sudden get the Oprah request back and it sees that things are unpermanent, you're like calling that listing agent and go, hey, did you know that basement's wasn't done with a permit? Like, you may want to have your client request the inspection now and see how bad the town's going to hit them up. Because the longer you let things go without knowing, it just has the possibility of blowing up down the road.
And you just go directly to the town for the Oprah, correct?
Yes, and the majority of the towns now, you can just go onto their website and they have a link that you can just print the form.
how
in
long
each
do they usually take?
Couple of days at most,
And that's-
usually pretty quick,
That's what it costs, correct?
very little.
What is that Oprah? Because I'm a little lost.
It's, what is the exact, it's the same as a FOIL, Freedom of Information. So yeah, any of the records about the property,
Oh,
permits or
property
anything,
records,
property records.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. What has been done with permits, what hasn't, those kind of things. And there's actually a list in NJAR. I don't think I put it in here. There is a list, if you go into NJAR in the documents, in the forms, there is a form that lists out everything that should be requested in an Oprah request. It's not a form that you submit to the town, but it's a form that you can give your buyer and say, this is what I'm going to be requesting from the town on their behalf. And you can do this. So the law just recently changed from the Consumer Fraud Act, always protected sellers agents. They recently just extended that to the buyer's agent as well. So you can get that information for your client. Just make sure any information that you give your client, that you tell them where the information came from. You want to make sure you're not representing things.
Yeah.
Do the municipalities in Jersey, do they go in the house? Or just, like here, they're like looking, doing.
No, they
circling?
go into that for the
Yeah.
inspection, for the
Yeah.
CCO, you have two inspections. You have a fire inspector and you also have the
That
building
they're going in,
inspector.
right,
They both go in, yes. So as a listing agent, many times you'll be sitting there waiting for the inspector for your client.
Is that for new construction too?
For new construction, well, there's a whole different ballgame with new construction. Yeah. They're just getting the CO for the first time, so there is no continuing CO. They're filing for the CO, so your inspectors are gonna come for that. Okay. So paragraph 11 talks about the quality and insurability of title of the home. Again, just read it over. You all know what title is, and this is telling your client. So when you're explaining what this contract is, you'll say paragraph 11. This will explain a little bit to you about title. Your attorney will talk to you about title more. The one blank, if you go to the next page within that paragraph, it does ask you to fill in what type of home you're using to make this offer on. It's going to be either a single family, a townhome, or a condo. You are not using this contract for a co-op. Okay, a co-op is an offer is made just like you would in New York with an offer sheet.
A letter of intent.
Well, no, a letter of intent is for a commercial.
Oh, okay, I've done it for co-ops, I don't know why.
Well, similar.
Jersey.
So in commercial, if you're doing a commercial deal in Jersey and you want to look like you know what you're doing, even if you don't, you want to make sure that your commercial offer is literally written as a letter, hence letter of intent. Dear so-and-so, my client is interested in purchasing this building. Our intent is to offer $2 million, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And when you're doing a co-op, it's going to be just like your offer sheet in New York. Here it is, you one page, this is my offer, boom, boom, set up, in a little template. Again, there is one in NJAR. Under the docs, they have one, so you can pull it and use that right from there. Land. Land typically should be written by the attorney, but everyone uses this contract for land. No one ever balks about it. It's not what this is for, but everyone uses it for lands. So go ahead, have fun with using it on land. Paragraph 12, possession, occupancy, and tenancies. If this is a property where it is an investment property and there is a tenant in there, first you do have to check off whether it's applicable or not applicable. If it's applicable, you need to collect the information from the listing agent. They have to get it from their owner, the tenant's name, the location of the tenant, which may not be the same. Don't assume that the person responsible and on the lease is the person actually in the apartment. So you want to make sure you get that, what the rent is currently. Is there a lease in place, what the terminal lease is, and security deposit. That's a big one, the security deposit, because we know the security deposit has to be held in an interest-bearing account that's set up by the landlord.
If you want the building vacant when at closing, do you still fill this out? That's part of the agreement.
Well, I would fill it out if you have this information now for what's there, and it would be like, okay, and you note that they're not going to be there, and you hope that they're not going to be there. So, but just in case they are, you need to have this information.
Lisa, when that security deposit is returned, the interest-bearing account, does the tenant get the interest plus, on? the-
Yeah, the 2 cents. And just a little note I'll throw in as we're moving to the lead paint, which is the next one, and we're talking about rentals. So in July, there will be all new paperwork added into NJAR. Well, before July, probably in May, I think they'll probably add it. For every rental, if it's a new rental as of July of this summer, before it's rented out, the landlord is required to either get a certificate saying that it is lead-free, if it was built before 78, or if there is somebody in there currently, they have until that person moves out, and then at the next term, then they have to get it. If it is not certified as lead-free, they need to have a lead paint inspection. Yeah, this is gonna be a lot of fun. So there's only about 17 licensed lead inspectors in Jersey. So if anyone wants a really good career outside of selling real estate, they might want to be a lead
So
inspector.
that's just a tenancy, correct?
That's just for rentals.
Rental.
Yeah,
Is that gonna be in New York as well?
No.
not yet. No.
Good enough right now.
Yeah, you have to remember too, well, I mean, not for Rockland so much, but Bergen County is old. It is, the homes, you have a lot more homes that are older, so you have a bigger problem with lead paint than you do that in Rockland County. There are areas in Rockland County that are older and do have that, but not as much as you do in Bergen. I just see a much bigger problem in Bergen County.
So if you have the inspection and they do find lead,
It's gotta be cured.
it has to be cured.
Yeah, they gotta cure it. It is gonna be fun.
It's not enough just to disclose it's there, okay?
Yeah,
Question
so all the rules and regulations have not been put out yet, so it's still open to some changes. So it'll be interesting to see what they actually put out, the requirements.
Question on lead, if the seller says it's been removed, they provide a receipt for it. After possession, they find was not entirely removed, it's covered up, what recourse as an attorney does
I was
this
gonna say,
buyer
then you're
have?
calling your attorney.
Again,
Then you're telling your person to go call their attorney.
Can they-
Again, there has to be damages. If there's no damages to any lawsuit or anything like that, there has to be damages. Otherwise, you're not suing for anything. Okay, they didn't get it all. So you bring someone back in and they clean it up.
Can they renegotiate for the buyer to sign a waiver?
The buyer can't waive lead paint.
Okay.
Not for the rentals. For buying a home, you can waive your right to inspection and buy a home, but for rentals, they're saying, no, you can't
Okay.
waive. That it has to be, the landlord's gotta do something. Yeah,
Just curious, what does a lead paint inspection cost?
I have no clue yet.
I'm just curious.
I think, so rumors have been around $750.
The kit you can buy at home improvement stores that do as good.
No.
No?
It has to be a certified lead
Oh,
paint
sure.
inspector.
Okay.
Oh my God. And then then to take care of it is probably.
It's gonna be interesting. So that's all the fun. So maybe you want to stay away from rentals in Jersey. All right, next one, moving on, is your regular lead paint. Is it applicable or not applicable? And remember to give your pamphlet to anybody if it is applicable, right? We have that pamphlet, I'm sure you have in your documents. And, you know, just a little food for thought, you know, with your lead paint disclosure, you know, if you don't get your lead paint disclosure, the last I checked, and I think it has gone up, it was $11,000 violation if you get caught not having your lead paint document signed correctly. That is not covered by E&O. All on you, has nothing to do with your broker. So you want to make sure, don't fool around with that lead paint, make sure they're initialed, checked, and signed, and you give that pamphlet. It's really no joke when, you know, when it happens to, and I heard rumors, and I don't know if it went up yet, that it was going to be 16,000. So yeah, lead paint is a serious thing. So, you know, just advise your clients, the house was built before 78. And, you know, you have the right to a lead paint inspection. But that kind of ties in with, you know, everyone's waiving all these inspections right now. Make sure you are giving your clients that lead paint and having them sign. Don't skip that. Don't wait till after the fact. Oh my God, I forgot to get it done. We've already closed. Hey, can you sign this? Because if lead paint is found, you're going to be liable. And again, that's not covered by, you know. I was just telling them, I said, I think it went up, or at least it either it did already or it is going up, but it was always $11,000 fine to the agent. And I think it's going up to 16 if it hasn't already.
We're tough on them with the lead paint disclosures, if they don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's why we're trying, it's.
it's protecting you. Yeah, all these little check things that Keller has for you, and like, you gotta have this, and you know, someone calling you going, this isn't signed right, or that's missing, you didn't, that's protecting you guys. All right. So everything in this under here where it talks about your inspection, your 10 days, that's all related right here to just your lead paint. So you have 10 days to inspect and 5 days after the inspection to notify if there's something. And you can either cancel or you can demand the seller to fix. Okay. And again, those are things then that the attorney kind of takes over a lot of this stuff. It's just that you know what's in here. So let's move down to the next page, paragraph 14, where it talks about point of entry treatment system, which is a POET system. System that was used many, many years ago in New Jersey. I have seen, the next paragraph is a cesspool. I have come across cesspools. I have never come across a point of entry system. These are both of these are sewage type systems. Cesspool is literally like almost like an open septic tank, so to say, if you want to think about it that way. Yeah, they're not legal anymore. I advise you as a buyer's agent, you're not checking off applicable or not applicable because you don't have that information. And when the listing agent calls you and says, oh, that wasn't filled out, I have no idea. What you have the information, you can check it out, or you're gonna let your client check that off.
So 14 and 15 don't check.
Correct. Just leave blank.
We don't represent the sellers, so we wouldn't know. So just remember that. If you're a buyer's agent, you don't represent the seller.
Paragraph 16, your inspection contingency clause. Here's where your inspection, all your inspections come in on this and the next page and a half. So without going into huge detail on all these, in general, we're talking about your home inspection, we're talking about your termite inspection and your radon inspection. So just read through this next page and a half, and again, they give outside dates of 14 days to do your inspection. So remember, we're in a competitive market. We want to get those deals buttoned up as quickly as possible. Okay, so you can just submit this as is with all these blanks and all these default days built in there. But what that means is that your client may not be thinking like you, and they're going, oh, well, I have to go away this weekend, so I'm not gonna do it. I got my accepted offer. I have 14 days, and they're now on the 13th day waiting to do their inspection. So now you spent 6-7 days getting your deal out of attorney review. Now you got another 14 days, and then they got, you know, another 3 or 4 days to get back to the attorney. The attorneys start with each other. You're talking, you can be a month away. And then all of a sudden they can't agree on what they found in the inspection, and the whole deal falls apart. And you've just wasted an entire month. So button those up. You can just tell your client, you know, don't change this stuff. Just say, look, you have the right. The date that they give you in the contract is 2 weeks from the date of attorney review. I want you to get this house. I know you're in love with this house. So let's make this happen. Let's get an inspector lined up. As soon as this is out of attorney review, no matter if we have to do it at night, if we have to do it the weekend, you have to take off a day, well, is what it is. Let's get it done quick. Let's put 5 days in there. That's my go-to, is 5 days. You know, again, though, it's a conversation with your client. If you're keeping your client informed and explaining to them what you're doing and why you're doing it and why you're recommending it, they're really going to appreciate you for that. Okay, and that's how you're going to build your business. All right, let's flip over to the next page. Oh, I did want to mention under 16F. Okay, flood hazard area. You always want to make sure you have, you know, I'm sure you guys have someone that does insurance and that, you know, does insurance in Jersey, because you will encounter a lot more flood homes in Jersey than you do in Rockland. You have a lot of the little hack and sack and this creek and that creek running all around through different areas. And you really have to be cognizant of that. And you want to have a good insurance person that can look and see if they can be fought, if they can change, you know, because they changed the flood maps. I think it's I'm like confused, COVID brain.
After Sandy.
2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago that they changed all the maps, the flood maps.
His
So,
responsibility is if the seller's agent, if the seller doesn't disclose that flood insurance is required, is it the buyer's agent's responsibility to?
Yes.
you know, if it's not disclosed and later found out, everyone's getting sued. That's just the fact of it. Everyone's getting sued. So if you know, I'm huge satellite person. I'm a Google satellite person in Jersey. I think you have to be, because there are so many hidden things in Jersey that you don't know about. Like, so if you're going to an area and you're not like, okay, I know Westwood, but I really don't know Westwood real estate. Very different. You want to make sure you Google any house that you're putting an offer in and take a look at what you see on that satellite. Zoom in, look around. You may see a little stream. You see a little stream, that is the bells going off. You better check into it.
But also on the tax records too, if you go into the list, they also have a little tab.
They have the tab
With the
that
flood
says,
maps.
yeah, with the flood maps.
Just want to add to what Karen said, that real estate data is not current. It's like 10 years, 9 years old.
They're pretty current. And NJMLS is and Garden State, they're pretty accurate. Not always, not 100%, but at least you have something
Raises a
to,
question and you can start asking and,
Yeah.
and looking and digging a little.
Yeah.
bit.
because you know, when you press on the maps within the MLS too, you'll see where it's like, okay, this house is in a flood zone, it's 100 year, this one's in 500 year, and this one is right on the border. I see it on the border. It doesn't show it. You know what? That's again, it's a phone call. You have someone on your team that you can call up and go, can you just run and check? Can you do a check on this and see if there's flood insurance
Some of
required?
the lenders will,
Yeah, that's
if
what's
you
gonna
have a good relationship with the lender that
Yeah.
really, you know, super.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. If you do it, if you, does your
Yeah,
office
we can
do it?
help with that. Yes. Mhm. All right, paragraph 17, just like in New York, Megan's law applies. You can't open your mouth, but you can always give the resource link to them here you go look up yourself. Let's go, okay. This is the other thing I was going towards with the off-site conditions, paragraph 19. So again, satellite I find so important because if you're in an area that you really don't know that well, even here in Rockland, you want to make sure you're looking and making sure like there's not, oh, all these beautiful trees, and then you notice behind those beautiful trees, because you can look at the area, oh, there's a dump. Like, you could be sued for that
Or cemetery.
if you don't disclose that. Well, cemetery, there's nothing wrong with the cemetery, it's quiet. There's nothing wrong with it, that's not affecting the value of my house, it just gives me peace and quiet. But a dump, something where they just knock down all the buildings.
Lisa's feeding your knowledge, I'm feeding your stomach, I got.
Oh.
Awesome. I was gonna ask you as much, but.
So again, just look at that. 20 is air safety and zoning. So in Bergen County, if you flip the next page, there's nothing, no towns here in Bergen County. Okay, so we're not talking about the air zones from Newark Airport. You're talking about all different air zones, and you'll even see here, it says the following airports are not subject to the Airport Safety and Zoning Act because they are not subject to federal regulation. And that includes the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and therefore they're not regulated by New Jersey, blah, 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 blah. You can read all this. So basically, if you're in Essex and Passaic and going down towards the shore, you're gonna have to really learn this stuff. Around here, you're pretty good to go. Yep.
If I could go back to just 14 and 15, so both of them we are going to not allow either because. it would be-
Correct.
Neither.
Mhm.
Bulk sales.
Bulk sales, I must have got that. Okay, so bulk sales is something you really don't have to know too much about. In general, what bulk sales is, it applies to a business's assets. So there's possibility that it could apply to a home flipper where they're selling homes as part of their business. And what this is, it's a form that the attorney must send 10 days prior to closing and find out if there are any tax liens owned. If the company has a tax lien, let's say for not paying their workers. Okay, this is like really outside the scope of really what you need to know. But just so you know what this is, if they don't pay their workers and there's a lien on the business and the business is attached to the premises that you're selling, hence a home, a flipper or somebody and it's attached to that, the buyer, if that form is not submitted, the buyer is the one who will end up having to pay that lien. This is an attorney thing. The attorney will be the one that gets sued, but it just has to be a part of the contract. So I don't want you to get bogged down, trying to figure out what does this mean. You just need to know if you're working with a flipper that you might ask their attorney, hey, they have bulk sales. You guys want to take a break real quick and go get pizza? Yeah.
How are you doing?
Because I was looking for somebody in New Jersey, so. Because I have a baker in New Jersey and needed a lawyer. Wow.
It's right here.
Oh, it is, yeah. Okay, I got it, it's okay. I got it right here, I'll take a
It's on
I was
picture.
gonna say it's on there.
Yeah, that's easier, yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I got this email. So, I'm not part of
Down.
Hi, Lisa, how's it going? Good, how are you?
But the access is based on. I like to pay my fees. I just don't know, I'm not overseeing. You know what I'm saying?
That final.
That's why we have you at a minimum fee or the state level.
Are you licensed in Jersey?
Yes. What's your name?
Marina.
Marina?
Yes, your name is?
Vinny.
Vinny, nice to meet you.
Being good? Being good?
Yeah, I'm on a diet. I'm getting married in July, so it's a wedding diet.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're trying hard, so, I mean, it smells good. I really want to eat it, but
As long as you're working out. You gotta-
no, it's,
I won't tell.
yeah.
Yeah, you gotta work out. You gotta burn what you eat.
No, I do, but it's more about diet. I gain weight so easily.
Oh, so you know.
Yeah.
You know that covered.
Yeah.
I mean, really, yeah. What do you have? So,
They'll mail it to me. I mail it to New Jersey with their form.
But you know, like,
I read that.
so look, we are gonna- the other guys, that's what we
New Jersey direct, Steve. There's a direct line and then Steve picks up. Makes it so now.
All right, I'm gonna see the address. Yeah. This is the address. So Serena, you got this.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's like less tedious.
I would say New York for the simple fact that I don't have this contract. Like, this contract is going over and over and over again. It's so tedious. Like, I'm definitely one of them, if left blank, I leave it blank. If I could leave it blank, I will. Because the attorneys reject the contract anyway, so it's like, yeah. So literally, North is like a wild, wild west.
When you have more, I feel like as an agent, like, let's just say you're a buyer's agent, right? Yeah. You have much more liability and I feel like Jersey.
I would agree.
Right?
I would agree.
You're more protected because of the, okay.
And at the same time.
I mean, anything-
This.
Like everything, like, I love that.
I promise.
I love that. I think there's more violations available to you in Jersey. I would really just argue that, like, because Jersey just has so many more forms.
Lisa, are you practicing attorney in Jersey?
Oh, here's a $10.
Practicing, no,
Well, I feel like.
I mean, I'm fully licensed and I can.
Even if,
I don't, I work at Cross Country Mortgage. Yeah, so I do business development with Cross Country, do a little bit of legal work with them. But no, and I've never done a real estate closing. Yeah.
Usually.
It's funny because an agent yesterday was like, "Lisa, please, could you please start doing closings?" And then like you could do New York, New Jersey, you know, so many people are involved in the business and I'm like, you know, I think about it for a minute and then I go home and my husband looks at me and goes, Lisa, really? You're gonna be locked in an office with
Those are like
a stack of contracts you gotta read
sign
through.
a like contract, so that way I don't know.
No.
I think this suits
That's
you.
like the worst.
I think this suits you.
At this point, you guys will make some happen.
And you live longer,
Yeah.
right? You won't have a heart attack, right?
With an investor.
That's what I say.
I have a guideline, they wanna buy it, so it's property, but that's split, so like go through rent.
Hey, we're gonna have everyone video sign in. You can start it off.
He didn't like cross all of his.
I know, I don't want anything
No
for it.
problem. He wanted to sign the contract, and then 2 days later, it was like, yeah, I have 4 feet, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, come again?
Let me confirm. Okay.
Like, sir, don't talk to me right now, talk to your attorney. Like, 'cause I don't know what's up with you.
When are we coming back?
When are you coming back? I'm not sure. I'm not sure when I'm coming back. You know, I think we're going to do, I'm gonna have Anthony do a class that he does great on called networking. You've been on that one. Networking your way to more leads, more profits and more fun. So you get to hear more of Anthony. Yeah,
He's awesome.
yeah.
He's the best.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, today's meeting. Lisa.
You're signing, I said,
No, I'm good, thanks.
you're fine.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
I wanted to buy a house in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Comment, tenants in common.
Tenants in common.
I wanna put a house up there, 'cause I already have a house.
My
I
social
want
media,
him to
so
get the FHA.
it's like I have like a social media name that I use.
What is
That
it?
is tomorrow.
You know,
And
like,
like,
oh,
people really
Yeah,
like
you can
this,
pretty
like,
much show up with an FHA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, FHA just means that if you don't have the money, you can go as low as 3.5% down, but you can go much more. Yeah.
I didn't like pull those things out of my ass. though.
Yeah, so are you gonna be on the
Like, my
deed?
short reporting them.
Yes. I wanna be
Okay.
happy.
And borrows my little
Yeah.
name.
You know what, ask Anthony, so Anthony's information is on the last page.
Okay,
Shoot Anthony an email
But, like,
or
the way
or
we
give
do
him
this
a call.
okay.
So he can go
My
over
name's
with
almost
you more
conversation.
about,
Cause like, there's a movie and a song called Creative Writer.
everything.
Yeah, and then like the
They
guy who made
require-
Creative Writer, his name's Tom Dooley. And then like, people are like, oh, Dooley.
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely
what's your real
call
name?
him.
Like, it's fucking.
Cause I'm looking to buy something from New
Yeah.
York. I have something in Jersey that when, being that I'm working both states, I wanna be comfortable wherever I'm at. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? I don't wanna be on.
So you wanna keep your house that you have there in
In New Jersey,
Jersey
an
and maybe
investment
rent it
property.
as an investment.
It's an investment, but I wanna buy.
And buy in Rockland. And then
When
buy
I'm here, I'll
with
have-
your son, you're buying in Rockland, or you're gonna buy?
No, I'm gonna buy a Yonkers, cause Yonkers is a little closer to this
Okay.
office than the Bronx.
Okay, so you're buying, leaving the Jersey, buying in Rockland and buying in Yonkers.
No, just Yonkers.
Just Yonkers.
So that's got money.
Okay.
No, I have equity. I got equity, right? The market is turning in my favor. I've been struggling for 4 years, believe it or not. But the market turned in my favor, then I have a credit.
Yeah.
You know, I have a credit, it's worth $479, only
That's
for the
awesome.
bank $200,000.
There you
But
go.
I'm not gonna use, that's old money, I'm gonna use new money. that I'm
Yeah.
gonna make it. You helping me out. You know what I'm saying? You helping me out. New money.
Love it, love it.
But I'm gonna put something about
Definitely talk
trade.
to Anthony, because he's really good. I'm not a huge numbers person,
Oh, yeah,
that's
I
not
love
my
it.
road, that's Anthony's road. And he's really good at figuring out and looking at what you have and how to structure it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Colin will tell you.
Oh, he's amazing. Any questions?
Wait, it's amazing that in the
When are we starting up
Senate.
again?
In a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Wait, he's on the back of this.
Oh, yeah, I put him on the back, yeah, that's who I work with.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
so, makes everything so clear.
I love
Such
that.
great patience with new customers, that are new in the business.
Okay, so let's
But
get back.
it's
Jeez.
Send some videos, you know, like 1 minute
So
video.
my question just is
Spirit.
why septic systems are not included in
Addenda in the agendas.
Just in the agenda.
Yeah, so you
But not in the
check it off.
contract, it will also then, right, and then we would just do
Check
it.
off.
on- That's what I would say. Okay, so make sure.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember my other one.
Yeah, the agenda.
Oh, anything else?
I have a late, consultation, like around 6-ish. But I talked about it was 40.
I think he answered pretty straightforward. At least I was with Sue.
You know, I mean, they always screw this up, but and it's actually important.
But you know what? I think her husband will go.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
It's so easy.
It's very great.
Good. You get all the information.
Good.
Right there. And then
I
I
would like
like usually.
So I'll just tell them, say, yes. Perfect.
License numbers, every addresses, phones, everything is right there.
Super. Thank you.
Sorry, just if it's like, I'll just, thank you.
Questionable.
All right, let's get started. It's getting late. Oh my God, I'll be here all day. Anthony will be missing me. Going, where is she?
That's good. It's a good day.
She bailed on me. Just to make sure this is my son. All right, so paragraph 22. Notice to buyer concerning insurance. Make sure, you know, again, this goes dually for New York and New Jersey, that you're telling your buyers to get their insurance ahead of time. Don't wait till the day of closing. It's the most forgotten thing. And everyone's scrambling the night before to get their insurance.
Doesn't the lender usually, I mean, they won't close
They
without.
won't close without it, but it's the attorney's job to tell them, and the attorney typically, I've seen so many times the day of, like, oh, where's your insurance? Like, they forget. So if it's a first-time home buyer, especially, you know, but again, this is keeping with your team that you're working with, you know, if you don't have somebody, we have somebody. So, yeah. 23, maintenance and condition of property. Just want to mention, if you have the listing and you're the listing agents, that what broom clean means, you know, that again applies in New York and New Jersey. Risk of loss, same as in New York, you know, seller bears the risk up until the time of title closing. 25, initial and final walkthrough. I'm going to make a very big warning on this because I've seen it, and this is New York and New Jersey. Agents have gotten so lackadaisical on this and really don't take this serious enough. And I'm going to give you some very recent examples. Doing the walkthrough ahead of time. Your client wants to do the walkthrough ahead of time. Fine. But you as the agent should absolutely do the walkthrough again the day of the closing. And I have seen this firsthand where thankfully my agents used to listen to me. And they went and they did their walkthrough 3 days before, and it was an empty place. The people had moved out, the sellers already. The agent went there the morning of. Oh, guess what? They were broken into. Everything busted up. They ripped out the piping. I mean, it was a mess.
What happened?
And that's on the seller. That's still on the seller, bears the risk of loss up until the title transfers.
Can the walkthrough be the day before? Evening before?
She was just,
It can be, but again, your client can end up, you know, buying something and all of a sudden going to the house, and if the house was broken into the day before and there's a lot of damage,
but you got insurance though.
you have insurance, but who the heck wants to go through that, you
Storm
know?
damage.
Storm damage, you know, I've seen it personally happen, so, you know, your business is based on referrals and how good you are. You know, your client wants to do the walk through 3 days before, that's great, okay, they're checking everything, and you let your client know, say, look, before the closing, I'm gonna run over it and just make sure there was no damage or anything. You know? It happens, life happens, storms happen, break-ins happen, fires happen, things happen. Good, all right. Adjustments at closing, again, just something for you to read through. This is more of an attorney thing, but just so you know what it says. 27, failure of buyer and seller closing. Again, more of an attorney thing, but you should know what it says. So just read that. 28, consumer information statement. Obviously, you know, just like in New York, you're giving that upon your first real conversation with the person. 29, declaration of broker's business relationship. So that is section A, buyer agency information. So your agency and your name go there. And you check off how you represent your client. Are you a seller's agent, buyer's agent, disclosed dual agent, or a transaction? And yes, we do use transaction agents in New Jersey. You will check it off, and if you're not dual, then B will be filled out, because then there is another agency, which would be the listing agency, and their information goes there. 30, your broker's information and commission. This really is important in here. Don't skip over it. Okay, and as Karen said, she's, I'm sure, told all of you and showed you that you can go right into the MLS and you literally just click on the name and pop, a window pops open and it has the agent information and their brokerage information. Okay, and you can copy the license numbers. All the information is right there.
The only thing you can't fill in is the listing agent's commission, because we don't know.
Yep, and it even says here, if you look at where it says commission due from the listing firm, in parentheses right above it, it says per listing agreement. So that's already filled in for you. You have nothing to fill in there, but you always want to make sure you're filling in your commission.
What about the information about the, you know, say if I'm representing the buyer, do you, you know, as a courtesy, do you just fill in the other agent's name and their?
Oh, you're
brokerage?
filling in everything. If
Yes.
you're
Right. I
representing the
mean,
buyer.
Yeah, oh, yes, me
Yeah,
as the
that's-
buyer, but the part where it says if more than one firm is participating, so the other side, do you?
You fill that in. Yeah,
I
you're
mean, I
filling in
always
this
do.
entire
Okay.
section. If you're
Yeah,
writing
and
the
then I always
contract.
Okay.
Yep, you fill it in. And down below where it says commission due participating firm on that last line, you want to make sure you're putting in your commission, and you'll see the difference with New York and New Jersey. The commission typically has minus a dollar amount, which can vary anywhere from $50 up to, as high as I've seen, is $375.
You're asked, we're filling all this out manually. Is there any way to capture all this stuff from the MLS and update the field?
You can copy and paste.
No, is there an automatic way you can capture the fields? Right into the.
I don't know your systems.
I don't think so.
No,
The
I mean,
contract, unless you're filling the contract out through the
Like we're-
MLS.
so
In
does,
New York, we import stuff directly into them. So similarly, is there a way to do it right into the?
what do you use DocuSign?
DocuSign.
So when you
Like it'll
fill out,
automatically populate.
Yeah.
yeah, so if you have these in there, DocuSign will pull it up, is it?
Yeah, but it's more in depth that you would have to
Yeah,
pull that out in. the
It's only gonna pull out
details. You're
your
filling it out
information.
But I'm saying stuff that we don't have to go over again and again all day.
somewhere. Well, it's only your.
It's only your information. The rest is all
Everybody else
unique to each
sees everything.
transaction. Yeah,
You could plug your information and store it, but. Company, so your license number, the company's license number, the address, they're very big on the office phone number in New Jersey, different than New York.
yeah. I don't know how your systems work, if you can make duplicates.
You
So,
can
so you can make a
print them out.
duplicate and then just blank it out. So if you have the same buyer that's making multiple offers, you could just
Or you can
change
use
like
this
the
form as a
property.
template. You could save it as a template, fill out all your information, the information that's going to be fixed and never change.
Mhm.
There's a way to do it in Command Word, showed me. I can't remember offhand, but there's a way to do it where you can save it and it will always populate with your information. Ask Lori. I may have written it down somewhere. I just don't know where that's.
I have to go, guys. If
Thank
you
you.
have any questions, you'll know.
Thank you for lunch.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
Bye.
you, Karen. Bye.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. All right, equitable lien, paragraph 31. Just know that if you're due a commission, it's a lien that can be attached to the house. Paragraph 32 on the next page. If you are involved in a transaction, you must disclose it. Same as it, no different than New York. And do you know the reason why you're disclosing that you're an agent? Why do you have to disclose? You go up to a seller and you're negotiating the deal for yourself. Why is it important to tell that seller that you're an agent?
Because we have a fiduciary responsibility, we have to.
Right, you have a
disclose.
higher
With a
amount
lawyer,
of knowledge.
By law, we have to
Mhm.
disclose
Yes.
it.
32, brokers to receive closing disclosure and other documents. When you're sitting at the closing and the attorneys are not in good moods and they go, well, you're not entitled to it. Yeah, you actually are. Okay, but. Professional referrals. Again, this is just stuff for you to read through. The attorney review clause. Again, I went over that at the beginning, how attorney review goes, and this goes counting the days. You don't count Saturdays, Sundays, or legal holidays. 36, notices. You have to give proper notices when things are, if the contract's canceled. Again, an attorney, that's the attorney's world. You can't assign your contract, just randomly say, okay, my brother's gonna buy the house instead of me. That's not allowed. You can't do that. You know, when I say you can't do it, things can always be negotiated, but you can't by yourself just say, okay, I'm gonna do this. You're allowed to use electronic signatures, obviously. Corporate resolution, you always have when you're dealing with a corporation, and someone has to have the authority to sign off on behalf of the corporation. Next page, applicable laws. Obviously, you're in New Jersey, it would be New Jersey. 42, the addendas. Okay, so you go through this list, and I have each of them. We'll quickly go through these. Buyer's property sale contingency, condo homeowners association, the coronavirus, I didn't include that. FHA, VA loans, all of this we'll go through really quickly. They're all attached in order. But I will say this on 43, something I always advise agents to put in as an additional comment. Subject to tank sweep. There are so many oil tanks all over New Jersey. And then you'll get the seller that says, oh, well, I decommissioned it. Great. And I decommissioned it with a permit. Great. No good. If you're taking a list in and there is an oil tank, even if it was properly decommissioned, you will most likely get the buyer saying, take it out. There was a huge scandal back in the day with all of these companies that were being used to fill the tanks with sand and decommission. We're not doing them properly. So even though a tank is decommissioned, there is a very good possibility that it can be causing contamination. You as the buyer, if you buy that property, you, the last one holding it, is the one responsible. You could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, Michael.
This is where I always put contingent on inspection, contingent on mortgage.
The contract, it's already in the contract.
It's in the contract, that's redundant.
Well, that's what the,
Tank sweep,
okay.
tank sweep.
So
I
the
mean-
term is, I'm so sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, go, Michael.
Subject to tank was a sweep.
Sweep.
Sweet.
Sweet.
So it's kind of like, you know, you see the guys on the beach with those things, they do sort of the same thing,
Yes.
just sweet.
Yeah.
Do you suggest that any sale in Jersey really is a prudent idea to tell your buyer, spend the money?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I do. It's such an expensive mistake. God forbid there is.
Of course, thousands upon thousands, especially.
Hundreds
if
of
it's still-
thousands.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just crazy money.
Yeah. And the problem is, like, people say, well, can we just test around? No, it's usually that it rots
And
out
those
from the
sweeps are not
bottom.
that expensive, they're a couple $100.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really not expensive.
Yeah.
It's like a lawnmower.
Yeah.
Yes, that's wild.
Sweep, and the other thing in Jersey, I mean, I think in New York you should too. I hear agents say, oh, they're first time home buyers, they don't have the money, don't get the survey. Okay, maybe because I'm an attorney, that just makes me shudder. Don't ever tell your client not to spend the money on getting a survey. I don't care if it is marked out, unless there are the actual painted poles and everything lines up. It is so worth it. This is probably the biggest investment they will ever have in their entire life. And there are numerous occasions that I have come across where the garage that was built as an afterthought 20 years ago, so it looks like a part of the house, and no one ever knew that it was built after, is encroaching on my neighbor's property. And they can hijack you and really Make you pay a lot of money. I had one of my own listings in Stony Point. An entire corner of an in-ground pool was built on the neighbor's property. Yeah.
What happened in that situation?
Thankfully, it was the downside. So this is how it is. And this is where you're gonna see it a lot, where, oh, here's woods behind me. Here's my backyard cleared out, and this was woods and a like mountain. But the house up on top owned all the way down here. And they were just nice people, and they just signed, and, they gave away that portion of it. They didn't give it away because that'd be expensive, but they wrote it into a deed as an easement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you can give an easement, people are nice, but they could charge you a lot of money to get that easement. Yeah,
Would
really?
you put subject to survey as well in addition to suite? Or
No, that falls under title. So when the attorney orders title, it's the attorney's job to tell the client to get a survey. Like, it's not your job to tell them to get a survey, but I have heard agents telling first-time home buyers who don't have a lot of money, oh no, yeah, don't get a survey. I'm like, what the hell? Why would you ever tell someone that? I don't understand it. It's, again, a few $100s.
would you rely on the seller's document if they have a survey? Would you rely on them? Would you order a separate survey?
I guess it would depend on the situation. I'm not gonna make the call. I let the attorney make the call, but I am not gonna be the one to say, don't get it.
Or that's a good survey, it's legal matter.
Mhm.
Would you add anything else in the conditional or contractual provisions?
Only things that you might, have in a negotiation.
Do you find it seems to be a problem in the state of New York or just Jersey?
What, the surveys?
No, I'm sorry, tanks.
Oh,
Underground
the
tanks.
tanks, I mean, you have, North Rockland, you have tanks, a lot of tanks up in that area.
I
And
had
then
people
some,
hit
yeah, depending.
$30,000, sellers $30,000. And luckily, the lawyer I was working with got the insurance company to cover a lot of it. But there's an area in Middletown where there's tons of them. and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all a problem.
Yep. Oh, guys, I did send around a list just for everyone to sign in.
Oh, I put it back on Karen.
Oh, did she? All right, go ahead, Mike.
Would you have anyone sign the witness section?
That we don't. Next page, wire fraud. This is a great thing, and it's something you absolutely should be just continually, always in New York and New Jersey, be telling your client to be diligent about, and never, never, never wire money unless they call, not receive a phone call, but they proactively call and say, hey, I got an email. Do you want me to wire? It's not, they get an email and then someone calls them and says, hey, you got that wire, the information? That's a perfect scenario. Wire fraud in my old office, four different occasions. Only one out of those four actually lost their money because it happens pretty quickly. Once it leaves the bank, like, it's gone. Very hard to get back. So just be really careful about that. And if you ever get anyone asking you, or you see an email about wires and stuff like that, you probably shouldn't. Your attorney really isn't sending it to you. So just always take a look at those emails, the addresses, and see if there's, it's usually one letter that's changed in the email. So they make it very hard for you to recognize. Okay, but yeah, we're all being hacked. All right, so let's real quickly go through these addendums. So the first one is your addendum regarding buyer's property sale contingency. Realistically, we're not seeing a ton of these right now because who's taking an offer saying, oh, yeah, I'll give you an offer, but I got to sell my house. That would be bridge loans, which we are now doing. So
You're doing bridge loans.
yeah, we're getting back into
Really?
that. Yeah.
I have a client who wants to sell her condo and buy a 4-bedroom,
Okay.
but she has to sell first. So you're saying this
You're gonna bring that client to Anthony.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh,
Okay.
yeah, we got some new programs, because of, right now you have to. So this is real basic. What this, read through it, what this is saying is when you do have a property sale contingency, if you're in contract, that would be A. Section A, if you're in contract, you have a certain amount of days to close. If you're not in contract, well, then we'll keep the offer and we'll consider ourselves in contract for a certain period of time you give them to sell their home. This is not going to be an indefinite thing. And then if they don't sell it in that amount of time, well, then we can walk away. The seller is allowed to market their house during the whole time to see if another offer comes in. It is what it is.
Is it signed at the outset before, while with the?
Yeah, so if you check any of those boxes in paragraph 42 of the contract, you must attach one of these addendas. All right. So we go to the next one, which is
What
your,
about the lead paint one, which, if it's
Yep.
applicable, you check it?
you check that, and then it's gonna be in here. We'll get to that. I actually put it in here. Okay, so the next one on the list is your homeowners association. And that is, you have to actually collect the homeowner's information, who is the management company, and write that in here. Usually it is in the listing. And then you putting in here what the HOA fees are, and if there are any known assessments. If you're not sure, you need to be in contact with the listing agent, say, hey, I'm leaving this blank, you need to fill it out. Right? Very simple. There actually is a right to inspection and how that would work in common areas. When you do a condo and you do an inspection, you will notice the inspectors typically will take some notes about the common areas. So this gives you the right to ask for things to be done and gives the seller time to request the homeowners association to do things. Okay, and I'm going to whip through these. So the next one is your FHA and VA loans. Again, you have to disclose that there is a difference between your FHA and your VA and your conventional. So just ask your lender and be very clear what type of loan your client is getting and just put it forward. You cannot go forward if your appraisal is low. So I hear and I've seen offers with FHAs and they go, yeah, we'll waive the appraisal, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, no, you can't.
The bank is not having it.
Yeah,
It's the money.
You're not allowed to on an FHA or
Bank's not-
VA.
yeah.
So just take a mental note of that. And it actually gives you the whole, the next page is the amendatory clause with the certification for the FHA saying that it has to appraise for a certain amount of value. They're very easy, these addendums to fill out. Next one, obviously, like I said, is the lead paint. Make sure you are checking, I see these and what I see missing all the time is in section 3, where it's like, oh, they just initial A and not B and C. There are 3 things there. There are different check marks. Just make sure this is fully and accurately completed. Very, very important. And I actually have it written down here, 16,000. So it may have gone up already. Again, that's money they come after you for, not your E&O, and your broker's not going to pay it. Next one is your new construction. So new construction, this is a very lengthy appraisal. They've cleaned this up quite a bit, which is nice because it was really unfillable in the past. But your major thing on here is giving the time to deliver the deed. If you can't close by the anticipated closing date, you can give an outside date. And again, the attorney's really going to go over this, but you have to have this with your contract put forth. What you want to get from your contractor is the insulation. And that kind of goes with the whole energy rating and stuff that everyone's gotten into. So that's just, you can, take a picture of this, send it to your builder and say, hey, what's the insulation? What are you using? And fill that in. I will note, if you look at paragraph 7, though, that unlike New York, for new construction, it's a law that, the builder is guaranteeing the build and you go after the builder if there's an issue. In New Jersey, there's actually a fund that the builders pay into.
Oh, nice.
So if there's a problem after with the construction, the money comes from that fund. Okay. Next, you have your private sewage disposal, hence septic. So if you're on a septic, this is what they call it, private sewage. And you just, are they investigating it? Are they gonna have a septic inspection? Either they are, or they're waiving their right to it. Next one is your private well testing, same as in New York, and literally this just tells them all about their rights and what well water should be, who tests it, what's done with it, what's potable.
And the well, onus is on the seller.
Mhm.
Right? Just like you know.
Yep.
The well, I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, so
Well,
that it's up
well
to the
water.
seller to make sure that the water is potable, you know, for the
So
buyer.
initiative.
If you're adding all these addendums in there, is that turning off the seller or is this required by law?
This is
or-
required. If you check a checkbox, it's expected that one of these is with it, the contract.
Reference, you check off these boxes, is that raising a level of difficulty?
No, it's,
Coming across as difficult to the seller and the seller?
no, it just means that you, as an agent, look, this agent knows what they're doing because all their dots are, their i's are dotted and their t's are crossed. They included everything that they're supposed to.
Follow the law.
Yeah.
That's basically.
Next is your addendum regarding properties with 3 or more units. Again, just read it, have them sign it. They have 3 or more units, you have to be registered. Next, you have your seller concession. If there is a concession being made, you fill it out in here. Everyone signs it. Next, if it's a possible short sale, you want to collect the information on who the lien holder is that would be doing the short sale, and it just gives everyone notice of a short sale. So you see what's happening is these are all kind of things that in New York, we just talk about, right? But in Jersey, they said, yeah, not enough people are actually talking about it. So we're going to make sure that buyers and sellers are aware by forcing you to include all of this in your contract. Next, you have your solar panels. Solar panels, you know, again, this is New York and New Jersey. Solar panels were so like the hot thing to do. And unfortunately now, you know, people going to sell their houses and the buyer may not necessarily want to pay that monthly rental fee towards the panels. And you need to know, is it outright paid? What would it take to be paid outright? Is this a full obligation that the buyer has? Because they're not coming to remove them. It's not in the contract. Okay. Next is your swimming pool. So just gives the buyer and seller what's expected if there's a swimming pool, what's included with it. Is it heated? Are there accessories? List them here. Next.
Was the seller or buyer for this swimming pool?
Well, if you have the information, you fill it out as the buyer's agent, you can fill it out. And it's something, you know, when you're there and you do the showing and you see, oh, there's a whole pool house. You know, oh, okay, so the heating equipment, and you just write it. I write everything. I see it, I fill it. Let them say, oh, no, we're not including that. Because what happens is when they do an inspection on it and the stuff doesn't work, if it wasn't included, well, then you're out of luck. It wasn't included in the sale. And then your buyer's looking at you like, hey, Vinny, the hell, you didn't include this stuff? Next, and I think last is the underground fuel tanks. So sometimes the listing will say there is a tank, and sometimes it will say they are not removing it. And then it's up to your buyer if they want to take the chance. But this is basically if you have knowledge that there is a tank, you fill this out and check the appropriate box. And that is it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Questions? You good?
Can I question about this?
Oh, what's the question about it?
Who's the
Follow
biggest-
us.
I'm just kidding.
Follow us, yeah, if you have, you know, I'd love to be able to show you, you know, any of you, if you're working with buyers, what we do, you know, on the buyer side, the mortgage
Your
side
license
with
in
our
New York as
clients.
well? Across country?
Yes. Yep, New York, New Jersey, actually, we're in all 50 states. Yeah, cross country has 800 offices.
How available, is Nick the only person in the office or?
No, Anthony, so I work with Anthony's team, we have a whole team.
Yeah.
And yeah, Anthony Nicholas. We have a team. We have 5 people on our team. So we do things, a little bit creatively rather than just having one person doing things. We split, we divide, we try to keep in touch, keep you in the loop as much as possible with everything. And one of the best things, right, and you can ask Colin, that Anthony does is like, he will really get on the phone with your buyer and praise you like there's nobody's business.
Just as a
Right.
testimonial.
That testimonial
He's-
coming from him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
I've dealt with a ton of lenders over the years, and I've never seen such awesome communication skills. And, he's continuous phone calls, but he's emailing them videos on next expectations, next steps, which are super helpful. And he's just a real go-getter, and the team, Shane, Danica, they're all awesome.
Are they all lenders? Are they all
They're on
officers?
Anthony's team.
So Shane is licensed, but Anthony personally does either a Zoom call or in person with every single client.
And is he, for a new person coming on board, let's say as an agent or insurance provider, is Anthony initially doing the Zoom call and all that and handing it off to the people in his team? What is the workflow like?
So we have, we have all different programs, which if you come to the class that Anthony's gonna do next, he's gonna talk about like what he does. We do like birthday programs and everything, like we are super in contact, so you deal with everyone on the team. The buyer, pretty much gets to know everybody on the team. So Danica is the one that's always making sure she never misses a buyer's birthday or, anniversary date, is always sending them things and keeping in touch even after the deal closes. And, we co-brand things with the agent. So, my big thing always in doing sales is, right here, your database, this is your business and you need to, so when, focus on that. So when a deal closes, like, that's not it. And I have a couple of people even in Keller that I'm working with that are like, oh, yeah, I closed on that one like 5 years ago. And I'm like, and when was the last time you talked to that person? I'm like, that's your gold mine. Like right there, that database, that's your gold mine. And that's what Anthony does. So it's when the agents can't keep up, you have two people working on it. So when all of a sudden we're seeing on our end, we have a program now, it's called HomeBot, that goes into the equity in your home. So I put you in there with your address and it'll come back and I just signed you up for it. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it tells you how much equity you have in your house. And then if you want, like, you could play with the numbers, it gives you ideas of how to do different things with your money. Yeah, so now when we see people active on that and it alerts like, okay, this person's really active and looking and they clicked sign up as a buyer. Oh, hey, guess what? Colin, this person is looking. You might want to reach out to that client of yours who you sold to 3 years ago because they're really active.
Yeah.
And you nonchalantly call up and go, hey, Carol, haven't talked to you in a while. What's new? And you go, oh my God, you know what, Colin? We were just thinking about calling you or whatever. We just started looking. We're thinking about moving. Boom. Like there it is. It brings it all back together again.
And how do you sign up on that? What was the name of the program?
That program is called HomeBot.
HOMEBOT.
HOMEBOT, yes.
How do you sign up?
How do we sign up?
You know what, send me, so I don't have everyone's list. Do I have everyone's? I know I have Vinny's, your contact info. I have most of your contact information,
I
I
don't
think.
think I put mine.
Okay, well, you have, email me or text me,
Okay, I got you.
okay?
How-
Yeah,
How's it going, as far as like appraisals, how's that, in terms of how's it appraising with him, each lender has different appraisers. I just experienced a house that didn't appraise, I was like, oh, so it was like a little, they had waived the appraisal contingency, so it was like, well, you knew what you were getting into.
Yeah.
but,
no, most of ours, I've seen a couple of things that haven't appraised, some things you just are so crazy that you.
I know, I like scoured,
Like,
I was like.
Yeah, we have our own, people that we use.
Just going back to Anthony again, just on the personal side of everything, we're doing a deal currently where my customer, he unfortunately had a car accident. He wasn't serious at all. I didn't even know this, but Anthony sent him, a basket of stuff. And,
Yeah, I'm gonna ask
Little
about that.
things,
Yeah.
little
How
things. Some
available
people
is
don't
the
get that.
after hours?
You know why? Because you got, until you get to the point like, look, my salary is being paid for them. I'm not doing mortgages.
Yeah.
I'm helping you guys build a business
Yeah.
because the more business column that you
Yeah.
do, the more business Anthony's gonna be doing and the more I get to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, so it all kind of works around.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's, like when you have the. That whole team.
Oh, yeah, for sure,
It's a
for
no-brainer.
sure. People, I think people are excited about it.
Thank you so much.
It's not
You're
a-
very welcome.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye, Vinny.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. You know, like I knew I didn't really do a lot of it, but you know, it's always good to hear it again.